Senator from Mississippi.
I rise this afternoon to join my colleagues in expressing support for S-Con-Res 3, the budget resolution, which, as most Americans now know, is the vehicle we will use to begin the repeal and replacement of Obamacare. This is a matter of keeping our word to the American people. This is a matter of keeping our promises that we've made not only during the last campaign cycle, but repeatedly since I voted against this bill some 8 years ago. Actually, in January of 2010, it was enacted, and Republicans on this side of the aisle and many Americans repeatedly opposed the Obamacare expansion of federal power. We said it wouldn't work. We said the president would not be able to keep his promises to the American people. And when we got a chance to go back in the majority, we would repeal that act. And so this is a follow-up on years and years of determination on our part, on this side of the aisle, to right this wrong, to keep our promises, and come up with a better plan to help Americans have coverage that they can afford and a doctor that they can keep. And I intend to support the chairman of the Budget Committee in the votes that we will have today and tonight. We have what some people call the vote-a-rama tonight. A number of votes will be taken in rapid succession, and we don't know how many will actually be offered by our friends on the other side of the aisle. I believe I will be able to vote against all of these amendments because I think keeping a clean bill makes it more likely that we will be able to pass this legislation, send it over to the House of Representatives where it can be tweaked over there, but passed, and get back to us for final approval and actually get a bill to President-elect Trump after he takes office, repealing Obamacare so that we can replace it with something that works. So this is our opportunity to keep our campaign promise. This is our opportunity to help the president-elect and the vice president-elect keep their campaign promises and show to the American people that elections have consequences and that at least this group of public officials intends to keep our word with regard to this piece of legislation, intended well, no doubt, but which could not possibly have worked to do the things that President Obama said it could do. The president told us in 2009 and 2010, if you like your health plan, you get to keep it. Turns out that is a promise that was not kept because it could not be kept. The president said, if you like your doctor, you can keep that doctor. Again, a promise that this administration and our Democratic friends on the other side of the aisle were unable to keep. And so that is why so many people around the country are opposed to keeping Obamacare. They want it to be repealed. They want a drastically different approach involving market principles to be put in its place. So it will work for patients and work for the American people. Obamacare is not working. It isn't working. It isn't working in my home state of Mississippi. It's not working for millions of Americans who lost their health insurance. It's not working for millions of Americans who saw their premiums rise and their deductibles go to unimaginable heights. And of course, Mr. President, I know you, like I, have heard from constituents back at home, and I am going to take this opportunity to share with you some of the views that I've heard from people back home in Mississippi who are looking to us in the House and in the Senate to rectify the situation with regard to this disastrous piece of legislation. A 62-year-old individual from Madison, Mississippi, wrote to me, saying, please explain the term affordable in the Affordable Care Act. I recently went to healthcare.gov to look at possible health insurance plans. The estimates range from over $8,000 to over $26,000 per year. That is anywhere from 13.5% to 18.6% of our gross salary. So forget about saving for retirement. This system is flawed, says my constituent from Madison, Mississippi. Another Mississippian wrote to me, I've heard in many publications about the increases in premiums for Obamacare, but that is actually a moot point when the only insurance that my doctor and my wife's doctor will take is pulling out of the exchange, leaving my wife with no choice but to possibly return to work just for the insurance. A third constituent from Saltillo, Mississippi, wrote, I just applied at the marketplace for health insurance. My quote was $415 monthly with a deductible of $6,850. I work less than 30 hours a week in retail. There is no way I can afford that. This constituent from Saltillo goes on to say, what am I supposed to do? I have a car payment and I need to eat. Well, I think help is on the way, and the action that we're going to take this week in sending this resolution over to the House of Representatives is a form of keeping our promise and providing assistance to this constituent of mine from Saltillo, Mississippi. These stories go on and on. For a woman in Gulfport whose husband lost his job, the cheapest plan in the Obamacare exchange was $1,042 with a $13,000 deductible. This constituent calls Obamacare legalized extortion. The 60-year-old constituent was understandably upset when his insurance went up by $113 per month. He then noticed that coverage that he didn't request had been added to his policy without wanting it or needing it. Pediatric dentistry and birth control were required on this plan, two things neither he nor his wife want to use or want to pay for. So I want to remind my colleagues that Obamacare is hurting individuals that have written to me, individuals that have written to all of my colleagues, but it's also hurting small businesses in Mississippi and small businesses in Pennsylvania and around the country. And I would remind my colleagues that most jobs in the United States are created not by large corporations, not by the big ticket manufacturing plants that come in to our states and districts that we like to have, but by small businesses, businesses under 200 people. A small business owner in South Mississippi wrote to me, following her husband's retirement, she had to find health care through the exchange. Her county borders Louisiana, and many Mississippians travel across state lines for work. The health care network that she has used for 20 years is no longer an option for her because Obamacare policies do not allow beneficiaries to use networks in different states. And Mr. President, that's something we need to address also when we finally put in place the replacement portion of this mechanism. The plan for this non-smoker with no pre-existing conditions under the exchange cost her $900 a month in premiums, and she was not able to keep her doctor. But you know, it's not just constituents in my more or less Republican state, among my more or less Republican constituents in the state of Mississippi, who are telling the truth about Obamacare. I want to quote to you, Mr. President, Bill Clinton, speaking on behalf of his wife in Flint, Michigan on October 4th of last year. Former President Bill Clinton said this, and I quote, "You've got this crazy system where all of a sudden 25 million more people have health care, and then the people who are out there busting it, sometimes 60 hours a week, wind up with their premiums doubled and their coverage cut in half. It's the craziest thing in the world," unquote, said President Bill Clinton just last year in Flint, Michigan. So I think if we come to grips with this, Mr. President and my colleagues, we will admit that this is a crazy system, well intended by some of my Democratic friends, but one that has failed the American people, one that has failed to keep the promises that were solemnly made to them when the bill was rammed through on a strictly partisan basis, with every Democrat supporting it and no Republicans supporting it at all, no Republican input, no bipartisan input on overhauling one of the most significant systems in our country. And so it's time for us to move forward, and tonight is a step. We're certainly not going to get it all done in one fell swoop, and even when we get the bill enacted into law and signed by our new president, President Donald Trump, it will take a while for it to be put into place. But tonight we show that we meant what we said, and we said what we meant. And we are going to follow through, pass this resolution tonight, and begin the process of keeping our promises to the American people to repeal Obamacare and replace it with something that works for the millions and hundreds of millions of Americans out there who depend on us.